Hi guys, welcome to the channel. This is Waga. Today we're going to talk about a few things to do with SwiftUI that get under your skin. A couple of things I do not like about SwiftUI. As you can see on the page, I have playlists using SwiftUI, so I'm not just saying this, I'm actually using it. And those are some of the challenges I found as I was building, in this case, the SwiftUI Instagram clone with Firebase. So basically I'm going to talk about a few things with SwiftUI, a few problems I've found with SwiftUI. Of course, SwiftUI is I think more than a year old right now, and there are a couple of apps that are on the App Store that have been built with SwiftUI. But I just want to talk about generally the issues I've found with SwiftUI. What's like about SwiftUI is how the use of functional modifiers requires a little bit of thought into how a view is rendered, right? Into how a view would look, right? For example, in this case, we know that when you put color is a push-out view. It occupies as much space as possible, but text is a pull-in view. Text occupies as little space as possible. Now in this case we have a button. If we look at rounded, we have a button, and in it we have a text view with a color view. So if you think through this code, you find that because the background has directly been applied to the text, right, the color is only around the text, and the rest of the button has the background color of the page, right? So if we change the order of the modifiers, like in this case, let's move the background. Let's come here and move the background like that. Cut that. Come here, and we can put it after the padding. If we do this, right, the color reverts back to how it normally acts, and occupies as much space as possible. So it occupies all the color, all the space that is allocated to the button, right? Now, the confusing thing here is that if you think through it, this text view is within the button view, right? So how exactly we order the functional modifiers will end up changing the way our view looks, like the way the button looks, depending on whether you put the background on the text or you put the background after the text and the padding ahead of it, right? And this can lead to a few confusions, right? You actually have to try things out and see them, and you have to know how you're supposed to order your functional modifiers to achieve a certain look. Now, if you compare this with something like, I don't know, I'm guessing Flutter, you don't encounter this problem of having the order of modifiers leading to a drastically different look of the view, right? So this is one of the annoying things. It leads to you have to think a bit more of how to put your modifiers to make them look a certain way. And this can lead to, I'm guessing, confusions and mishaps. With Xcode and autocomplete, I find that most of the time autocomplete just gets in your way, and instead of helping you write code, it actually hinders you. For example, we can use the example of button, right? If you look at my SwiftUI Instagram clone with Firebase, half the time I'm just trying to get out of the Xcode autocomplete out of my way, because it ends up hampering your experience. For example, in this case, we want to create a button. We can do that. Come here, put those braces like that, and come here and say action. You see, the first hint I'm given is the action and the label, which I do not want to use. And you find after that it does know what the problem is. It's saying extra trailing closures, right? And we could get rid of this. We could get rid of the label here, because I don't want to use it like that, right? So you find half the time the autocomplete can't get in your way. Rather than helping you, it ends up costing you time and making suggestions that are not tuned to the way you want to do things or you like doing things. So half the time you end up typing everything out because you don't want the autocomplete giving you the autocomplete is not actually very helpful. So Apple should really look at fine-tuning the autocomplete aspects of Xcode, particularly when you're using SwiftUI. It could be better. That we could talk about SwiftUI, right? And you find that there's still a couple of bugs that Apple hasn't worked through with SwiftUI. For example, let's take the example app that we're building. Flexigram, it's an Instagram clone. I'm building it on my channel. You can have a look if you're interested. Here we have a tab view, and in the tab view I decided to make the various tabs in question, right? The various tabs to have a red hint, a red hue, a red accent. if we could put it, right? So we have a tab view here. We can look at the tab view, and we made the accent red. Now, the unfortunate bit is that everything after we did that, the red accent went and affected everything that can be accessed with navigation, via navigation, right? I didn't intend to make the logout button red, but it turns out it renders out as red because it's, for some reason, the accent color, which if you check is on the tab view, because I wanted the tabs to have a hint of red in them. The unfortunate side effect is that everything that you can navigate in, or you can click on to go to another page, turns out red now, despite it not being on the navigation view. If it was on the navigation view, you could say that maybe that's something to do with the navigation view. But now we have unintended consequences such as this, right? So we have this logout button is red. We come here, we find the messaging button is also red. We find that on the search page, the search users function is also red. The back button with the discover is red. And on the profile, we have, of course, we've gone through that. So basically, everything we have to do with the navigation turns out red as a result of putting it on the tab view, which may not be what I wanted. But short of getting rid of the accent color, there is no way I can get rid of, or I haven't come across. Maybe I haven't found it in navigation. So these are the few kinks. Also, you find that the send button here is also red for some reason. So we have lots of kinks like that. You find on the comment screen, the red button also returns a red hue like that, right? So basically, we find that we have all manner of problems and kinks that needs to be ironed out by Apple, maybe in SwiftUI 3.0. The final pain point when you're using SwiftUI is the documentation, of course. The documentation, you find that Apple has really let the community down, and when it comes to creating documentation to go with to accompany SwiftUI, there's it's too little, and oftentimes you find that even what has been supplemented, like if you go to Stack Overflow, you find instances, you find that there's some answers that have been passed by time. Like I was looking for answers to a question. I found one that had been written when SwiftUI was still in beta, and some of the names of some of the variables and property wrappers has changed and things like that. You find that the documentation is scant even when you go to the official documentation and have a look at them. They're not, they do not help, right? And oftentimes it's up to the community to come up with ways, and sometimes you find that you may not know whether there's a performance penalty in doing something one way as opposed to the other. If I may jump into Flutter, you find that in some instances the Flutter team has made recommendations on how to use code, right? How to do things, right? How to achieve certain things, and they have made, if you want to know about the performance costs of doing something one way as opposed to the other, they have made suggestions and explanations. But you find that in SwiftUI, most of the time we're flying blind, right? And there's Paul Hudson, of course, who is a saint, who has a YouTube channel and a website where we go and find lots of answers. But we find that that is not adequate. For example, if you're following my SwiftUI Instagram clone, you find that, or it's coming up in the future, where we use a tab view, we try to make a navigation view and a tab view work, right? And we find that there are several challenges, and at the end of it, we have to abandon the original approach we're using in the app. I've already recorded all the videos, I'm just editing them. We have to abandon the original approach and go for another approach, despite that the most authoritative voice in the space, right? Paul Hudson in one article says that you should always wrap a navigation view inside tab view, right? But you find that in SwiftUI 2.0 or iOS 14, this creates several problems, and we go over the problems, and I explain some of the problems we face as we're building the app. I explain this, right? So you find that without Apple coming forward to explain why, for example, we shouldn't wrap a navigation view in a tab view, or why when we try doing that, it creates all manner of problems in child views and views that are wrapped by the tab view. Without Apple explaining that, we are actually just tinkering. We're tinkering at the margins, and it would be better if an engineer who knows the internal workings of SwiftUI better comes out and explains to us why you should not do this, or why you should do this like this, and things like that, right? So basically that UI remains a really good, it's better than UIKit, I think. It has less code than UIKit, easier to understand, and I believe declarative ways of building UIs are the future. So it is the future of building apps on the iOS platform. And I encourage people to continue using it, and I encourage Apple to make it easier for users to use it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will see you in the next video.